Mamma mia.
So, can we officially start? Can we start? Yes? Are we all ready? Thank you. Thank you. So, it's scorching hot, obviously. 40 degrees boot, who would have predicted it? Anyway, I do apologize for the inconvenience, the heat and everything. Set aside, thanks for being here. Truly from the heart. Thank you all. So before starting the conference, in a short while, I want to remind that the book signing will be at the end of the conference. It will be held with the speakers, we'll put a table there, then we will line up one at a time, and not all together. Let's try to bring una book only. If we bring 2 or 3 books to the speakers, we won't be able to finish until midnight. There are too many of us today. So we will make an orderly queue, and then one by one towards the speakers for the inscription and so on. Then I wish to take a few minutes to say thank you to the numerous guests coming from abroad too. We have people from New York, from Los Angeles, pretty much from everywhere around the globe. However, I want to thank them all quickly, one by one, and I would start from the neighbors. Lamberto Rimondini. Where is Lamberto Rimondini? Please, stand up. A native Bolognese. Thank you for being again with us in this event. We have Lorenzo Maria Pacini, but he's late, but he will be here. Then we have Victor Nunzi. We don't know where it is, but it was there until a minute ago. Victor is always on the move. Davide Baroni. Where is Davide Baroni too? There he is, interviewed several times on Expedition. Thank you. We find him on all the various channels, because obviously here today there are researchers, there are scholars, YouTubers. There is a bit of everything today. A big hello also to Spazio Tesla. Where Alberto Negri is, as always ready with his interviews. Anyway, applause to him. A round of applause to Antonio Prapp. Where is Antonio? Then let's spend a moment on the international side. So we have here directly from New York, Trevor Grassi. Please stand up. With our friend, Frank Rogala. Stand up, Frank. This applause is for you. Then we have George Howard of the Cosmic Summit. We have a director here in the room, very famous for 6 giorni sulla Terra, Varo Venturi. Thanks also to Damiano Piras. Here he is. Please stand up. His bibliographic contribution on the possible localization of the Second Sphinx, but then we will hear more from the speakers. Welcome to Luigi Sgariglia, the tour organizer. Come?
Hello and good evening, everyone. I just want to remind you that our Egypt tours will continue. Next year, we will bring our whole group, in collaboration with the Kafra project, March 4th through 19th, 2027 in the land of Kemet.
Con il progetto Kefren dal 19 al 24 marzo 2027 nella terra di Kemet. Ho scelto queste date perché per questo
I chose these dates because for this third trip, I want to bring the new group in particular on March 21st to the Giza Plateau to witness the first spring sun in front of the Sphinx with a private visit.
all'interno della piana di Giza per poter assistere al primo sole di primavera davanti alla Sfinge con una visita privata. Sarà un'intera giornata.
It will be a full with a packed lunch so as not to waste time dedicated to the private visit of the plateau, of all the shafts and the pyramids, especially that of Cheops, which we will enter privately to be able to view all rooms.
Privatamente per poter visionare tutte e tre le camere. A fine giornata,
at the end of the day, we will move
ad
west
ovest
to be able to
per
view
andare
what
a
our
visionare
researchers will
quello che
show
i
us
nostri
today.
ricercatori ci faranno vedere quest'oggi. Io non,
I won't take up any
non vi
more
rubo
time,
altro
and I wish you a
tempo
good
e mi auguro buona
conference.
conferenza.
Thank you.
Here we are. I see so many present of the tour, right? Which we did in October with Luigi Sgariglia. We see a lot of people present. Good. Here they are. Yes, you are all here then. Then finally heartfelt greeting. And I sincerely thank my team, the Team Expedition, which is the official channel of the project. Kefren, then from the bottom of my heart, Manuel. Voltolina, who is the web manager by Expedition. Rita Monteleone, hear it. It is video editing. Roy Bennett, the music of Expedition, with a special contribution. Now you will hear it of Angelo Corvino Svolin, bravo. Then Nicole Ciccolo, the voice of Expedition.
Grazie.
Thank
Allora, partiamo
So
con la
let's start
sigla.
with the opening credits, then we will start the conference.
Dove la sabbia custodisce il silenzio dei secoli e il vento cancella le tracce di chi l'ha attraversata, la piana di Giza custodisce una verità antica che attende solo di essere svelata. Qualcosa di antico e consapevole respira ancora, in attesa che l'uomo osi guardare nelle profondità, laddove sono sepolte le nostre origini.
Oh,
Allora, è passato un anno e qualche mese. A year and a few months have passed since the first meeting that has happened right in this room, which was packed. It was March 20, 2025. And the Kefren project was addressed for the first time to all humanity, revealing things that never were said before. Because as someone says, like the professor here in front of me, conscience predicts that the discoveries belong to everyone. So leave it to me to say that we are the true witnesses of these great discoveries. Noi, tutti noi, voi. All of us, all of you. Definitely Giza, the Giza Plateau guards, as I said in the theme song, an ancient truth that does not consist only of stones or ruins, but something which is conscious and that still breathes, waiting for the man to dare to look into depths where our origins are hidden. Someone here with us today dared looking into those depths, and thanks to absolutely innovative technical skills and a scientific approach rooted in consciousness, it was possible to achieve today this extraordinary event. So a huge round of applause to those who made everything possible. Professor Corrado Malanga e Filippo Biondi, venite.
Thank you. Let's do a microphone test. Thank you. Well, today we are, after a year technically, with the idea that we must somehow move forward.
Con l'idea che dobbiamo in qualche modo andare avanti.
Moving forward means showing which are our latest results, but in some way by giving a sign on the closing this part of the program.
Ma in qualche modo dare un segno di chiusura di questa parte del programma.
And there's a reason why we are giving it a closure. This closure represents the beginning of a new stage, which we will do. We will try to obtain results in others' directions. But I don't have to tell you this today, but we'll see what happens in the future, because basically today we have to talk about what we have achieved, what are the results. The results we have obtained are of a certain type. But I would like spend some time, let's say it in Italian too, in some way that we have used a parameter which is very important that people have forgotten about.
In qualche modo che noi abbiamo utilizzato usa un parametro che è molto importante di cui la gente si è dimenticata. Il buon senso. Cioè, utilizzando il buon senso, noi non possiamo
common sense. What I mean by that is that by using common sense, we cannot say that the pyramids are tombs. I mean, you have to... If they give me the slides that are somehow important, as soon as I get the slides here on screen, I'll tell you what I thought of telling you. Here they are. And in fact, there are still some things that don't add up. So, as we conclude this discussion today, I would like to touch on some points on which the research regarding Egyptology, the Giza Plateau, or our history, towards which the research has turned a blind eye. And to do this, you need common sense. The only thing we know well about the pyramids is that they exist, which is practically the only certainty at this point, so to speak. Even if this thing explodes in our hands, in the end we know that the pyramids are there. Let's start with the key points, those on which there is no turning back. The pyramids are not tombs, and never in any of them a mummy rag was found. It's not my fault. The internal structures make one think of a sonic machine which works with wind, water, and granite. And these are the results of our research. There's no turning back from here. These are the certainties. The Giza pyramids cannot physically having been built by the Egyptians. We say it here once and for all. Or this, or this. They definitely look older 13,500 years ago. These are the results that we must have the courage to say. Others can think as they want, but we won't budge from here. Their structure, it makes you think of an underground facility in which hundreds of people live there. We have looked underground and saw that these things are there. We photographed them. There's nothing to do. Do what you like, jump through hoops or do somersaults. These are facts. We don't need to go digging to see what's underneath if we want, if they give us permission, if they give us the money, if they give us the funds. We will go there, but if they don't give us the money, it won't matter, because we did already the photographs of that area. So let's start from this point of view to talk about everything that is not yet understood well. Khufu's sarcophagus. Yes, and the floor of the room. We never really talked about it. You see, this is an ancient photograph that dates back, I think, to 1888, which was made by an association, Underwood and Underwood, who was born a few years earlier in 1886, and that was specialized in stereophotography. So much so that you see that there are some errors. That is, it seems there is, inside the pharaoh's chamber, where these two gentlemen were put just to show off what are the proportions of this stereophotography. You can see something fundamental. First of all, there is a lot of writing that are not well known, nor we know how come they are there, and then the ceiling that appears to be round. The ceiling is not round, but that's a problem of stereophotography, which at that time gave this type of issues. And there's a lot of things written here. It's written in German, it's written in Greek, some even put their date. They were certainly quite wealthy people, who at that time, in the years of 1800, it was common to write on all the things that you would have found. Monuments, let's write on them. Today, that is clearly something that could no longer be done. But I want you to understand that these writings are no longer there, so they must have gone somewhere. Here, however, still with these old photographs, I would like to show you this situation. You see that there is a notch here that makes you understand that there was a lid on top, of which no one knows absolutely nothing. Also, because then the sarcophagus, as you can see, it's broken. But here there is a little hole. This little hole is also in Khafren's sarcophagus, and was probably used to improve the closure of the lid with a sort of stake that went in this little hole and tried to keep the lid nice and straight.
paletto che entrava in questo buchetto e cercava di tenere il coperchio bello dritto.
From this other situation, you can see that the floor is broken here.
Voi potete vedere che il
Do you see it?
è rotto qui. Lo vedete?
How strange! Right in the direction of the breakup that everyone knows about sarcophagus.
Del sarcofago.
Look, you can see even better from here. Here there is actually a knurling in the floor. This is a granite floor. It's not like that it can spontaneously break or because people walk over it. Why the floor is broken? Because someone hit it with a pickaxe. It took a hit, to better put it. From this angle we look at it and we still see there is a deep abrasion in this part. Like it's not a pickaxe blow, more like as if something that fell on the floor and got dragged somehow. And we then must ask ourselves, how strange that all of this, it's technically right almost in front of this hole, to the crack in the sarcophagus. Look how this breakup is made. What caused this breakup? Nobody knows, but one thing is certain. If we look at it closely, we can use critical thinking, we can use common sense. Look, there's a wave. Do you see it? And this wave can also be seen from here, that is, the breakup of the upper part of the sarcophagus is wavy. And you would tell yourself, why should I care? Do you see it better here? It's still wavy. It can be seen fine and has a precise wave. Could be a shock, a strike of this type? Answer, no. Because, as you can see, the breakup is completely different. There's something that must have hit the corner. And what would it have been? Maybe it was an object. The simulation shows that IER fell from above. So, if the object falls from above, it crumples. The sarcophagus below crumbles, and these waves are created, as the computer shows. Well, then there could have been something that fell from above. But what could have fallen from above so heavy? If not the only thing we don't see, that is, the lid. And this is what we could see. Such a big lid, yes. Based on all other lids, which, for example, are in Saqqara, the dimensions between the bowl and the lid, they are of this type. So it means there must be a lid which somehow weighs a lot. So what if the lid weighs a lot? Let's try to make it fall. If we drop it from above, we see in the first animation that the edge breaks and this part here comes into pieces. How strange! Let's do some calculations. The calculations we do, which are written here in small print, but I'll show you the most interesting things, the most important things. You see it here? Let's pretend that the lid weighs 2,000 kilos, 2 tons. Do you see it? Here it takes about 0.64 seconds to go down to fall to the bottom. In the end we have 39.2 joules, which also means megapascals. That is a nice blow. If the lid that weighs, let's say it weighs 2 tons, would have fallen from a height of 2 meters. If this is the case, here it is written what happens, the analysis of the damage. It says that Egyptian granite has a typical compression stability in between 130 and 170 MPa. So basically 40 MPa does not destroy what's underneath, but it only opens a wound that could be the one that we see today inside this structure. The visual description of the simulation that we did makes us understand how it takes about 0.32 seconds with a speed of 3.14 meters per second to get the result that we have shown. Funny how is 3.14. Sometimes math is strange. Let's see the modified simulation with the new dataset. The falling lid produces not only a break here, but a wavy break across the whole part of the long side and the short side,
su tutta la parte del lato lungo e del lato corto.
But there's something more.
C'è qualcosa in più.
Do you see here? It's broken here, and then the lid slipped. Let's assume it was lifted by something, held up high by something, for example, something made of wood. Why would I say wood? Because we didn't find anything that showed this stuff being held up. The wood could have been destroyed by itself in 13,000 years. Something broke. The lid bent and slipped off from at height in this direction, breaking the corner from the inside, ejecting the splinters and crashing on the floor.
Lo spigolo da dentro, eiettando fuori le schegge e andando a sbattere sul pavimento.
And let's look at these strange photographs. You see that? When Zacchaeus had restored the room, he cared about closing this hole, which at this moment was closed by a grate because otherwise one would fall into it.
Questo buco, che in questo momento era chiuso da una grata perché sennò ci si cascava dentro.
But inside the room there are some stones. One is this and the other is this one. This one, that you can see from other photographs, is exactly as long as the length of the sarcophagus, and this one is round. Can you see that this one is molded in this way? But it won't be that these two pieces, which are no longer there, were they the pieces of the sarcophagus lid that broke? They then disappeared. Who will be the one who made them disappear? You see, as usual, the two gentlemen who are here to show the proportions of the situation, and you discover that here there is, right in this area of the floor, those signs that could be due to the fact that after that, the lid of the sarcophagus fell in this direction. The other pieces of the sarcophagus are heavy. We put 2 tons, but they are much more if the lid is the same as the other lids that are scattered throughout Egypt. These 2, these 3, 4 fragments collide on the flooring, coincidentally right in front of the fracture. And again, here you see that in this photograph there is an object that is this one. Do you see that this round one is also molded in this part? It's a piece of the lid. Then you can see it better from this reconstruction, and then there is another aspect of the matter. I don't know if everyone knows this, but the sarcophagus, it is not parallel to the room. The sarcophagus compared to the west side, it is moved by 5 centimeters, rotated by 5 centimeters right on the side where it broke. So if this is true, the lid came from above, it slammed under and pressed against the granite tub, and it has rotated it. And here, there, all the literature data that shows exactly this, what I'm telling you. So, from this point of view, for example, this reconstruction has never been done before by anyone. And we have to ask ourselves, why? Since it is so simple to extract data of this type. Because, as you can see, data of this type is there, but none has used it. And look, holy shit, Look at how it was destroyed, the floor right in front, scratching the granite, destroying the granite. There is no other explanation. If anyone has another explanation, please come forward. But as long as there are no other explanations, you'll have to keep mine, because it is the only one at the moment. But the problem is not to say, oh, cool, you just gave an explanation. What I want you to think about is why no one thought of it. And the reason no one thought about it is because evidently the archaeologist has the mental structure of an archaeologist. He is neither an engineer, neither a physicist, nor a chemist. And these things don't even cross his mind. Why did we manage to gather up data? Why did we discover things? Precisely because we were not archaeologists. And so we weren't tied to what the path of School of Archaeology, which is fixed, orthodoxly speaking, to everything that has already been written. Pyramids are tombs, full stop. It's written in the book. And if it is written in the book, then it must be true. Instead, to us, it turns out to be something different. This is just an example. If you use common sense, everyone from his home, without being an Egyptologist, understands exactly that there was a lid. But if there was a lid, the ones we saw before are the lid pieces. But if there were these pieces of the lid, then it means someone took them away. And you can't take this stuff away. It must be maintained. The monument there, as is. The de facto state cannot be altered. Zahi Hawass already had plugged the hole in the floor, then he removed the pieces of the lid. He hid them, burned them, thrown away somewhere, and we simply have to ask ourselves why he did that. We don't know why he did it, but at this stage, we know that he did it. So, another mystery, the mystery of the coverage of the Khafra pyramid. But why Khafra's pyramid still has a bit of coverage while the other two don't, we have to ask ourselves why, because today's chemists, engineers, and so on, they did ask themselves why. You can clearly see that somehow the pyramid of Cheops, which is this one, it is a pyramid that appears taller, bigger, larger than the pyramid of Khafra. Because Khafra was 143 meters tall originally. Now it seems that it is around 136 Mitzerino 65, and today it's 61. But the interesting thing is that 146 meters is the Cheops pyramid, which today is reduced to 138. Despite everything, the pyramid, which is the lowest of the three, the second in height, looks always higher. Partly because we take photographs from below, but partly because it is built on a plateau which starts from at least 10 meters higher from the pyramid, which should be the largest, which instead appears the smallest, because it is essentially a problem of perspective. If you look at the level curves that we have extracted from scientific geology work on the Giza Plateau, find out that they are there 10 meters difference. This one is 10 meters higher than this other one, basically. Here is the Sphinx, okay? Very good.
Which is about 20 meters above the surface of the sea, while we are here 70 meters above the sea surface.
So you see it's going uphill. When you are there, you don't realize that it is there because the plane is so large, and it feels somehow like you're walking almost on level ground. But that's not how things are. Then there's an issue. The issue is, let's do the math. This is a table in which you can basically see it, the total elevation of the tip on sea level of the Cheops pyramid of Khafra and Menkaure. Menkaure is the lowest, we care little, but 198 meters means that the tallest pyramid, which now it is 138 meters, it is basically about 10 meters lower. Let's keep in mind that now the two pyramids are almost equal in height, 137 and 138 meters, but 207 compared to 198. This appears to be much more above on what it is. But things haven't always been this way. Why? Because if it is true that there was a flood, and if it is true that the water has risen to a certain level 13,500 years ago, which is when it has been spoken about a universal flood, we have to realize that this stuff was underwater for a while. 1 year, 2 years, some say a long time. And then the water entered in the structure of the pyramids, corroding the material with which the pyramids were built and causing the glue to weaken that somehow was keeping the external structure smooth, beautiful, intact, which then over time it fell. But then this could mean then the top part of Khafra's pyramid, it hasn't been wet. But this would mean another set of things. You see, in this table there is a comparative summary, basically. And what you see, the interesting things you see, is that Khafra, compared to Cheops, both have compatibility with the immersion, which is very high. But Khafra's pyramid substantially preserves on the top a little of the external part. It will not be that, the data is this, shown on screen, then substantially we can see them with numbers. When the water rose, maybe the part where the Khafra pyramid rests was, back then, 13,500 years ago, higher than the one of Cheops. This was the situation. Khafra, Cheops. Then there it comes, the universal flood, and the water comes, then raises. It raises, and the pyramid of Khafra is much more higher than that of Cheops. Then after 200 years of water in the plain, the Khafra's pyramid and the Cheops pyramid collapse a little, but Khafra's pyramid descends further, while that of Cheops drops less. How do we know? Because scientific works tell us so. This is the base of the Cheops pyramid. There is something interesting. In the Cheops pyramid, there are all these little holes at the bottom that they are used, says a hydraulic engineer, to make the water flow. But it's not like whoever built the pyramids knew that at some point there would have been water for 200 years. He didn't know. What were these holes for then? To make the water flow. But which water? The one that, according to our books, where this is fully mentioned, it served to drain that sort of large swimming pool which was filled with water when the pyramid was being used as a sonic instrument, vibrant, where the water had its precise meaning. Once the job was done, this large pool, both the one of Khafra and the one of Cheops, got emptied, and therefore these holes were needed on purpose to increase the flow and speed of emptying the water. Otherwise, it would have disturbed the foundations of the pyramid. Now, you must know that Cheops' pyramid, which is the last one built from our point of view, was built better than Khafra's pyramid. Therefore, the Khafra's pyramid, which does not have this type of operation, has fallen much more than that of Cheops, which dropped less. So, even though there are only 10 meters of difference, when there was the level, let's say so, 13,500 years ago, during the universal flood, the two pyramids were one much higher than the other, and the taller one was Khafra's pyramid. When the water got to a certain height, we could guess that it arrived there at that point, and therefore below everything and under, the outer covering material was destroyed, but not above. Keep in mind that, yes, you could also see, at a blind guess, let's say, Therefore, we put this line, which is the line on which we could place our camera. We notice already, as is that things speak clearly by themselves. But a long time ago, this pyramid was higher. Definitely higher. The first line is the line of the sea. So this parallel line from this point of view makes us understand the difference in height between the two pyramids. And B, even if there is a parallax error, because obviously this is a reconstruction which is lower, while we should be higher up with our camera line to make sure that things are truly correct. In addition, there is also another aspect of the issue. Why is this done in such a way? Why is there this cone-like shape? Why there is this situation here? And this situation, you can see it in the literature here in English, but if you go and look here, there is someone else in it. There is someone in the literature who establishes that probably there was a water event. This event made the waters to raise, and it has also produced an internal infiltration. This internal infiltration, in the end, after 200 years, it ensured that the covering could be easily disgregated, where there was water. Where the water did not reach, there was no disruption. But why is it shaped like that? Because when the water rises in a pyramidal structure, the edges, by capillarity, suck up more water, and therefore water in the edges, it raises more than its center. As the computer says, the water rises more by capillarity at the edges rather than in the center. This makes us think that at this level, what is left of the external surface had precisely this type of situation. But why didn't anyone think of it? This then, in the simulation, we can reproduce it. We can see that the water increases, and we can also impose to the pyramids to descend over time. You can see from the animation what happens. They come down because under the pyramids, the pyramid of Khafra descends more when the ground falls, because under the pyramid of Khafra there is more emptiness than under the pyramid of Cheops. But it drops just enough not to destroy the structures below, so it says the AI model we asked to play this type of simulation, you see that one piece of that one, while the other pyramids essentially ended up underwater, but a piece of the pyramid in the middle remains. And what our friend and researcher Zaki Awas says, we had to remove a large amount of salt, NB, I must add marine, from the surface of the walls of the Grand Gallery. We did it by hand, a couple of centimeters of salt. This salt, Zahi Awas says it was the product of sweating visitors, yes. Unfortunately, that's what he said, who were sweating, and the salt of the sweat was stuck to the walls. So, I remind you of one fundamental thing.
I don't remember at the moment what is the Boleting melting point of sodium chloride, but it's thousands of degrees, so you would have to have sweated a lot.
But that's not the only testimony. The other testimony is that dates back to this Petrie's dating. He says the same thing. We found the pharaoh's tomb full of sea salt. Then the fact that sea salt exists in there means that during the flood, which showed how the water rose, the pyramids got filled with salt, and these little pieces of salt can still be seen today, sometimes attached between one brick and another. Sea salt. This shows that since the universal flood, it didn't happen like 3 months ago, but it happened 13,500 years ago. This is a clear proof that 13,500 years ago the pyramids were already there. You see? Common sense. This is one thing that makes you understand that we shouldn't even have to talk about the fact that the pyramids are only 2,500 years old BC, because this isn't true. It's a massive bullshit. It's common sense. This is common sense that tells us this. Let's look at what happens when the water arrives. Let's run the simulations. The water arrives, let's assume that the tub is intact, and look what happened to the light. First, the water stopped, and don't fill the tub, because the water, even if it should increase, it would come out from the north shaft. But the refractive index of the system has changed. How come? Here we had the lamps that Zahi Hawass put in order to let tourists in, but in the moment the water tries to surpass the two heights, that's when we discover something fundamental. The room is illuminated better than when dry. This makes us understand something fundamental, that the lighting inside the rooms of the Cheops pyramid was obtained with a light source that was held under water. In this context, water behaves like an optical fiber and carries the light everywhere throughout the path of water. This is, in our opinion, the why and the how. We wrote the first book on this. There was light.
There was electricity and water, as well as in the Queen's chamber downstairs, you see?
The water stops at a certain height because above that door, the water can no longer go forward. Past this door, there is pressure of this area which does not allow water to rise. The water comes out of the second shaft. This is how it works. This is how the computer tells you. This is how the computer tells you common sense. That's what artificial intelligence tells you, etc., etc., etc.
We have to ask ourselves another thing, the mystery of the vertical shafts.
So, let's try to better understand. This is a photo of the Khafra pyramid, the Sphinx, and the path between the Sphinx and the pyramid. You see that there are a lot of little holes on the ground? There's a lot of them. Some of these have captured our attention. Especially this well, you see. This and this. But above all, this one, which is very large, and now you can't see well from here, but I can assure you it is empty. There are no debris. You can take a stone, you throw it by counting the seconds elapsed and discover that it is 80 meters deep. And you must ask yourself, "Ooh, how strange! How come this is empty?" This is the same, and then there are other wells which are completely full of debris. There was 500 years ago, the universal flood in there. Loads of rubbish got in. Then they threw everything inside these shafts that have all filled up with debris. Why some of them are empty and all very clean? Here are the tomographs that shows below the big well what there is. Can you see this thing here? Do you see that there is a nice little room underneath, and here it is, another small room? If you do the same tomography at 90 degrees, you get this one where the little rooms are viewed at 90 degrees. That is, that it looks like one long corridor. Notice there's another thing here in the distance, and another thing here in the distance, and another thing here that appears than to us was not of interest, and so we have cut it off. But the big well is this one here. A well that you can certainly see it at certain levels has some horizontal structures that are connected to other structures. You give the computer the two tomography scans, and the computer says, "Look, there are situations like that." You can take them however you like, but in short, they are there. There are things, structures made this way. You can't base your conclusions just on imagination. Why? Because me and Filippo might have imagination, but the computer doesn't know what pareidolia is. We then have to trust the computer when it tells us, yes, things are as you say, because the spectrometry SAR data is what it is. So here, this is well A, two wells, one here and one here, which are the ones that gave rise, if we put ourselves there, above the tomography, you see. One is this in the middle here. These two are one here and one here, which are further back because we basically have done the tomography here. This is the cut. So everything in front is softer like luminescence. This one is a little bit further back, and you can see it clearly that underneath here there is something very interesting. Do you see the edge here? This edge here goes under this part here, which is precisely what we showed in the last conference, Bologna 2025. That is, under the first Sphinx, there is a series of structures of vertical shafts that go deep. But what are these wells for? How are they made? So do you see, this is a type of well. We tried to highlight a few things. One is that the well is not squared, but here there is one more smaller room, and then here is the downstairs. So, do you know what a well made like this reminds me of? I, who many years ago was a surveyor, I can see immediately what it is about. It's an elevator hole. Why? Because the elevator goes up and down in this hole here. And here, the counterweights of the elevator go up and down. All those aspects, those pieces of steel, iron that were placed, now the elevators are hydraulic, I'm with steel cables, etc. But once upon a time, a heavy lift had to have a pulley with a counterweight, and the weight of the elevator with the stuff inside, and the counterweight. They had to be similar because otherwise the ropes would have broken and the pulley wouldn't be able to do the effort to be able to move this type of operation. And in fact, there are floors below, so you pressed the button and said, I want to go to the second floor, and there you go down. And how does this thing work? It works that you enter this place where is the elevator is, let's imagine, a small wooden room held with a pulley, and depending on how much you weigh, on the other side they load the stones. So the elevator goes down and up simply because you do this with a rope, because on the other side there is a weight equal to yours, and therefore there is no need for an engine. It works by hand. Here is no need for electricity to do this type of operation. You see this? This is another well which has the same type.
Do you see?
These are modern elevators. They are substantially the same. So we didn't even invent the elevator either. But not all wells are like this because some are different. For example, some have a hole made like this in the middle. What purpose will it serve? The hole made like this in the middle is useful because there is only one explanation from a structural point of view. To put tables on it, probably made of wood, which served to prevent people from falling from above or by accidentally jumping in it. This is a kind of grate of protection. Somehow this object, this vertical shaft, it is used to pass air from the top area to low area, because the lower area, as we showed many tomographies ago, the lower area...
Well, we are 1,000 meters underground, or 600 meters underground. There's a bit of heat, and then the air has to be exchanged.
So we need vents that allow us to obtain the result, that is, that those who live below and who go up and down with these elevators, somehow they won't die of heat or stale air, and these wells here were intended to achieve this kind of operation. Some of these wells serve also to another thing, and they were also used to quickly empty the Giza Plateau, especially in the large tanks that surrounded the two great pyramids of Khafra and Cheops when they filled with water. Once the pharaoh's rejuvenation operation finished, the water had to be quickly returned to the Nile.
Piana di Giza, soprattutto nelle grosse vasche che circondavano le due piramidi grandi di Micerini, di Cafre e di Cheope, quando si riempivano di acqua, finita l'operazione di ringiovanimento del faraone.
And to do so, there are wells that don't let the water pass through because they have a low wall. So the water reaches at most up to the top and does not go down. It doesn't fall.
Unless we have a hole made like this one.
This hole has been made in this way, probably because there was a bulkhead. At a certain stage, the bulkhead was pulled up. At this point, the water descended inside, went deep down, and returned to the depths of the river Nile. And so, with an operation like this, the well was easily emptied. You didn't have to wait hours. Do you see how these wells are made? These always have a low wall next door, which has now become small because the plain has filled up with debris, the level has risen and came down, etc. But at one point, this level was a little bit higher, and here they go down. And many of these wells, as you see here, they are clean. Do you know what that means? It's just that someone cleaned it. Holy shit! And they didn't tell anyone anything about what they found in there. Oh, how strange! Look, they are also very big, and look here, you see this opening here and this thing here? The water comes in here, but here is a grate, a portcullis which is pulled up and pulled down. That's what these moldings are for water at some point. From here it comes down, and this is a gigantic well. So think of how do you say, a gigantic tub that must be drained from the water very quickly. You can't take 10 days. You have to spend a few hours. So these holes are huge, and they go into great depth. Here you see how small people are, in comparison, in a ways. You see? I didn't want to touch up the focus of this one photography. You go down, but these should be full of debris, and instead, someone removed the debris. The plain is full of grates of this type to prevent tourists from ending up inside one. The plain is full of these things. Therefore, we must try to understand, and common sense makes us understand, through the shapes that I showed you, that there was more than one application. These wells serve several things at the same time. Here too, common sense is enough, because in the end, many of the answers begin to become plausible. Look, maybe that's what it was for. It is clear that to understand well, if all of this is true, we should take and go there. It costs nothing. You get a drone of the 50 euro size ones. The drone descends, gives you a map of everything up to 80 meters, goes back up. You spent 50 euro on scientific research, and you know exactly the LiDAR mapping of the well. Why wasn't this done? Because someone says, someone who is our friend Zahi Awas, in one of the latest interviews done on a London podcast, he says, I have never forbidden anyone to do research. WTF? Are you serious?
If you go to the Giza Plateau, there is a metal detector in order to enter the Giza Plateau itself.
And then, why would he tell us that we didn't ask him for permission to do measures? But we took the measurements from home, that is, we looked with binoculars with the telescope. No permit was needed. In the same way, no permit is needed to bring a drone and drive it down and then up to recover him while taking all the necessary photographs, not having broken anything, not even a stone moved. We have to understand that the pyramids are not just in Giza. They are in many other places in the world. So, for a moment, let's think about it and try to locate the pyramid problem in the world. If we do this, we discover that there are loads of countries where we can find pyramids, and here you can see them all. It's written small, but in short, Guatemala, Honduras, Peru, China, Mexico, all over. Except in India, we can find pyramids everywhere around the globe, but not there. There are different cultures that built this stuff, or it is the same culture that had roughly the same technical skills and the same basic culture to be able to build similar buildings. From here onwards, we shall take into account this. This is a slide I took from TVCT channel because Davide Ramuno and Luca Zampi have wrote this very interesting book, Egyptians Made in China. In which they say that this cover, it's not a cover made by a designer. It's not made with artificial intelligence neither, but it is a real figurine found in China. And when you look at it, you can only exclaim, "Holy crap!" That reminds me of something. It reminds me about this, which is the so-called sacred beard.
It reminds me of this, which is the snake coming out of the head.
And it reminds me of this strange headdress that looks exactly like the one the pharaoh uses. The only difference is that it has almond-shaped eyes. How strange! So let's see what actual science says about it. Probably fake science dressed up as real science. It's a coincidence. Holy crap! So much for that pareidolia. It's a coincidence, they say. But we must try to understand. The oldest pyramids of this type date back to Neolithic culture, Ongshan. So we are among the 4,700 and 2,900 years before Christ. Let's pay close attention to the dates, because then we will disgrace ourselves. With examples such as the pyramidal structure of the site of New Heliang and others like it, obviously, such as the site of Shimao in Shanxi province, and which date back to around 2200 BC, therefore approximately 4,300 years ago, and are considered among the largest Neolithic complexes known in China. The most famous, most imperial pyramids are concentrated around Xi'an in Shanxi, with approximately 38 facilities.
Among these is the famous mausoleum that everyone must have heard about, where they discovered the terracotta army.
When you take your time to look into it, to ask what is the point of all this, then the Chinese historian tells you that these are the tombs of the ancient emperors. The ancient emperors who died approximately 190 years BC. That is to say that they practically built a mortuary for him about 4,000 years before the emperor was born. Do you understand that there is something that doesn't add up in this very banal speech? They, the emperors of that time, found this stuff, and they probably have said something like, "What a cool monument this stuff is. I'm gonna make my grave over it." And not only does this happen, but there are some scholars who say that the Chinese pyramids are extremely older because dating is based on organic traces or residues of humans that were found there, who obviously are not the builders of the Chinese pyramids, but they are the ones who found them there and had stationed there. Maybe they burned a couple of animals there to eat them, and clearly we find those traces with carbon-14 in these structures. And we say that the people who were June lived there, the most ancient possible, they are also those who have built the pyramids. Maybe this is absolutely not true.
So the dating of these monuments basically sometimes is much, much older, as we can also see from here.
In fact, the theory of the Egyptian origins from China, it makes little sense, but it's been done, which says that the Ixos, who are the Hittites, who were also emperors and Egyptians pharaohs, who would have taken a little trip to China, and while they were there, they built the pyramids there too. Clearly, no one believes this type of argument, but it's written in the books, or the Yongshan figurines. The Yongshan figurines are twins of the god Bes. There are some statuettes that have been found, and they are made of green jade, like similar statues in the Egyptian area. They were made of green jade, same as in Latin America, with the use of green jade to do this type of statuettes. The issue is with the god Bes. Later we will delve deeper into that. The god Bes is a fat little guy with his tongue hanging out, and the statuettes were placed on the tongue of the dead emperors because they had to protect them in the passage to the afterlife. This made someone reasoning about these statuettes. How strange! They are equal to the ones of the Egyptian god Bes. There was this kind of equality, so to speak, and then there's another kind of parallelism to do, because it is a recurring story that concerns the great river. So, there are 9 branches of the Nile, which somehow end up to the sea, and there are ancient Egyptian writings in which the famous Yellow River would have somehow... It was actually written that there were 9 rivers where the Chinese built these pyramids, and some historians have thought that these 9 rivers were actually the 9 branches of the Nile, and therefore the original story was always the same. Yet, beyond all of this, it's the Fuxian Lake issue. The issue with Lake Fuxian in China is that 2 or 3 have been discovered years ago, and now they want them to become a heritage for humanity. Pyramids have been discovered that are underwater, under the lake, and they seem to be part of a much more important complex, and it suggests an age much older than 2,000 years ago. These structures include worked stone blocks. There are pyramids in a larger architectural complex, with shapes reminiscent of the Mayan pyramids, and are found at significant depths, up to 97 meters underwater. Look, these are the photographs of what lies beneath the lake. This stuff is over 10,000 years old, according to some, more than 1,000 years. They look a bit like pyramids to us. I'll say it again. They resemble pyramids. As you can see here, these structures, the photographs are what they are. We didn't touch them up in the slightest way. And then, attached to a pyramid, there's this face here, which is clearly classic of a culture that we know, which is more Eastern than the Egyptian one. Well, I mean, they were not made with artificial intelligence, these things here. How strange. Again here, more structures of a civilization that no one knows where it comes from. Nobody. There are videos. Of course, you can hardly see anything. But I report it to you to make you understand that these images exist. They are true. They were not made with AI. In this script about these structures, it says that at least 3 pyramidal structures have been identified, one of which is tall, 19 meters with a base of 90 meters, as well as a complex of approximately 2.4 kilometers around, and buildings circular in shape and square. The characteristics: the blocks are worked, Some are engraved, you have seen some with strange carving, and the dimensions resemble those of the Egyptian pyramids. Yes, each of these blocks practically weighs 70 tons, like in Giza. The hypotheses on the age are useless for me to tell you, because the estimates are so high and vary that it's hypothesized that can go further back from 2,000 years ago, even if there are people who think among the 5,000 and 13,000 years ago. Right, at Zeptepi, the beginning of time, as Armando May would have said if he were here with us. The relevance! The discovery suggests the existence of an advanced submerged civilization, which perhaps has to do with the mythical city of Atlantis. Yet, 25 kilometers from Lake Fuxian, there is an interesting site called Ongshan. You see, this is the area. If you want to see it better, we can see it here. Under this lake, they found all these pyramids, and at this point here, they found the statuettes, which I'll show you now. Does this statuette remind you of anything? How strange, isn't it? This statue looks exactly like it could be. And there are many. So it's not a coincidence. So it's not like someone carved a statuette and passing by threw it at random. There are many, the usual fake beard, the usual Ouroboros, let's call it a big snake, that comes out of the head of the pharaoh. But is the pharaoh Egyptian? No. He has almond-shaped eyes, so what can we do about it? You see, this is another one. In this context, you can see not only the same symmetry, but also the base, which is the same base as the vertical sarcophages that are used on the Giza Plateau. He looks like the spit image of the Egyptian pharaoh, isn't it? So here you can see some of these examples of this coincidence. You see, once you show to the computer the photographs, and it tells you, yes, it's a coincidence, but this case, it's not just a coincidence which concerns the statuettes of the pharaoh. Let's look at these little figurines, which are those of jade which we referred to before. Look at the headdresses of these statuettes. Look at them carefully. Do you see? These are the headdresses of Chinese figurines. And here are some others. There's this one with the big long head that it reminds us of the dolichocephalic people. And here you can see these figurines here. And therefore we now need to understand some fundamental thing. And again, we see another statuette and another. This one with the horns and with these two things here in the middle. Well, these figurines are the identical headdresses to those of the Egyptians. Look, here this stuff that this subject has on his head. Do you see? Here too with this long hat. It is evident. Do you see how it's made? Look at this. And well, if you look at this, then you must remember this one. And you might discover that it resembles just a little bit. And then, this is the god Bes. This is Egyptian, and this is his little Chinese friend. Funny how there are the same positions, the same belly, the same navel. If this was just one statuette, we could say it's a coincidence, but there are all the other findings we've seen. From the most sensational ones to the less sensational ones, but they are there. And not only that, should we want to talk more about sphinxes, there is also the Yongshan Sphinx. This is the Chinese Sphinx, which is the same as the Egyptian one. What should we say about this whole thing? Are we making this up so that we can say that the Chinese were dealing with the Egyptians because they exchange information with each other? No, they did not exchange any information. This we know it for sure, because if it had happened, we would have found a series of information between China and Egypt for which it would prove that one of the two populations migrated in some way by getting closer to the other. All this is not here. It does not exist. There's nothing about that. Let's look at these figurines here, the god Bes, or whatever this object was. Here he has almond-shaped eyes, here maybe not. This gentleman compared to this, can you see? There are striking resemblances. One of the things that struck me the most, and it will strike us again later, it's that little snake there. And again, but not only in China this time we have the same issue, we also have it in Latin America. In Ecuador, where this copper statuette, it practically looks the same to the corresponding Egyptian goddess with everything that comes with it. This comes from the treasure of a famous Father Crespi. Here you have all the info. There are between 3,000 and 33,000 artifacts found, of which many are copper plates. These copper plates cost an arm and a leg, and therefore the poor Father Crespi, who was a missionary, he couldn't even afford to pay for forgeries of over 3,000 pieces. Well, the Egyptologists say it's a fake. For this reason, it is imperative to understand that the Egyptologists have nothing to do with science. This is a fundamental thing. We are in Latin America. In America Latina, you see, there's a big similarity between these finds. Here we are in Tutankhamun, but look at the Egyptian pharaoh and what he could be the corresponding South American pharaoh. What does this mean then? Here, however, we are still in America Latina. The El Azul twins were found, and I report them because they are in the same one position of the pharaohs, in the same position as the Sphinx, and they were both found with their faces facing east. We do not know if they were originally in this position, but the fact of finding at least one that faces east can be important because the symmetry of the sphinxes that we find in the Giza Plateau makes us understand that it is precisely in that direction, both east and west, that the sphinxes should look by tradition. That is, where the sun rises and where the sun dies. Why has no one done studies of this type? How come no one, or almost no one essentially, except the authors I showed you, who happen to be Italian, have thought about pairing these things? This means one fundamental thing. It means that no one thought that there was a civilization upstream who had built the Egyptian civilization and the Chinese civilization and probably a lot of stuff in pre-Columbian South America too. There are no other explanations. But let's move on because common sense doesn't end here. Egyptian words. Where does Egyptian writing come from? We know that Egyptian writing is the first model of ancient writing. Structured with, so to speak, precise grammar rules. But we want to open a door that might be useful from tomorrow onwards to linguist experts to try to understand what I'm showing you now. Da domani in poi ai esperti di linguisti per cercare di capire quello che sto. This is the entrance to the famous Cheops pyramid. In here there is probably the only real writing, because the other ones which are found inside in the interior of the 5 rooms that are in the Z of the pyramid are fake. They have been falsified. Here we are certain that they are true. And this gentleman, Professor Kurt Shieldman, died in 2005, who was an expert in Sanskrit and was a consultant to the German Ministry of Culture, so he was surely not a cretin. He thinks that this is a proto-Sanskrit script. Ed era un consulente del Ministero della Cultura tedesca, quindi non era un cretino. And in this context, the Proto-Sanskrit writing would read like this, which is quite interesting. From the masculine, he says perhaps from the strength of the masculine, it comes out somehow like thunder, the appearance of the feminine.
Del maschile viene fuori in qualche modo come un tuono.
Do we all remember what, in our opinion, was the purpose of the pyramid? The pyramid was used to disconnect the part feminine of oneself, the soul part, as we defined it in the past, and sticking it inside of Pharaoh. Ah, how strange! This type of translation could be in accordance with the very research we have done. If so, let's analyze some Egyptian words, but not how they were written, but how they are pronounced. Akhet. Akhet is a hieroglyph. You see it here in the middle.
Akhet è un geroglifico, lo vedete qui nel mezzo.
Some actually call Akhet Khufu, the pyramid of Khufu.
Alcuni chiamano Akhet.
This hieroglyph would represent the sun between two mountains, which are the two pyramids of Khafre and Khufu, rises. This would be the meaning, the horizon of the sun, the birth, the life, the pharaoh, the sun, etc., etc. And we can take this into consideration. That's what the experts say.
E questo noi lo possiamo diciamo prendere in considerazione.
But
Questo è quello che
we have to think about something fundamental.
gli esperti. Però
I'll go back for a moment.
dobbiamo pensare a una cosa fondamentale.
The two sphinxes, that could be one sphinx only, in Egyptian reconstructions, they're at each other's back.
Sfingi che potrebbero essere una sfinge sola, nelle ricostruzioni egizie sono di culo.
In this regards, and in this situation, they would be right, as they should be, because here is the first pyramid, here is the second pyramid, and they don't look at each other in the face, they look at each other's back. So it could be that this is not, as some say, a demonstration of the fact that the ancient Egyptians, when they showed sphinxes, they were actually one and not two. But they draw two due to a symmetry problem. It seems like they liked symmetrical things, like those people who, when they set the table, or when they make the bed, that the sheet must go down on both sides, exactly 20 centimeters on the same side, right? That would mean essentially that they were maniacs. And then I asked myself, if they were like that, obsessed with symmetry, why they didn't draw the sphinxes facing each other, one in front of the other? Now from an NLP, neuro-linguistic programming point of view, the drawing speaks clearly. If you want to draw a mirror image, you would have drawn two sphinxes looking at each other. If you draw them back to back, it is probable, not certain, that actually these two sphinxes could be placed in the Giza Plateau, one to the east and the other to the west, of two pyramids where Akhet appears.
Nella piana di Giza, una a est e l'altra a ovest delle due piramidi in cui Akhet è.
Analogously in this situation, can you see, it's not that one time they put them facing each other and back to back another time, they were always drawn back to back. So there must be a specific reason. Because the ancient Egyptians do everything with a specific reason. And it turns out that if you want to go and read it, you'll find out that the ancient Egyptians had the fixation to describe everything they did. Everything they didn't do, they couldn't describe. So when they describe the temple, for example, the construction of the temple has often to do with the mysterious construction of the house of life. They describe the rope ceremony. The pharaoh goes out at night in the dark and traces a direction with the rope. Why does he do it in the dark? He does it at night because he has to see the North Star. Otherwise, he is not able to put the rope in the right direction. Having drawn the rope, seeing where the north is, it's then a matter of waiting. Tomorrow morning the pharaoh returns and builds the square on which the pyramid was probably built. or the house of life, the life house. This was the reality of the facts. Basically, there was a sentence here, let me find it. Akhet is the cosmic space where it is born the first hill, because we will see that the pyramid has to do with a mountain, the Sphinx has to do with a mountain. But here's a strange story. When I was conducting hypnosis Daniela, who was a girl from Naples, who lived in Pisa, and she had submitted hers left to be put under hypnosis. In one of these hypnoses, she remembers when, in a previous life, was in Egypt, and she was a man. He was dealing with these strange beings who were not human and who did certain things. In fact, it was asked her, "What are you doing there?" And he said, "I came here because I have to help Ra to find those people who are full of energy." We take them and put them, on behalf of the gods, inside the sarcophagus. From inside the sarcophagus then comes out an energy which is needed to Ra. All of this said under hypnosis. Was it useful, necessary to anyone else? I then asked. It is also needed by the snake. This was her answer. And is it useful to anyone else then? I replied. No, it is just enough for Ra and the serpent. Then there's no more energy for the others. This was his answer. When at certain times the hypnosis could become terrible, hard to bear, very strong emotionally, I would have usually asked questions that were of no use to me whatsoever. These questions only served to distract and to lower the emotional state. So I asked him, out of the blue, who made the pyramids? Imagine, 30 years ago or so, I was not interested at all in the pyramids. And the answer was, Al-Nitak Akut Khufu. And I'm like, what the hell did she just said? We then ended the hypnosis. So I'll start doing some research. And I discover that Al-Nitak is one of the 3 stars of Orion, which actually means, from Arabic language, belt. What about Akut then? But was it not Akhet? Why did he say Akut with a U to me? There is something you must know about Egyptian written words. There are no vowels as, basically, we have invented them, because we don't know which vowels were between one consonant and another. The Egyptian language is a bit like that. And then it occurred to me that probably the real pronunciation is not Akhet, but Akut. Akut Khufu. And what does it mean? And at that point it happened to me to think, what if it was a Sanskrit word? Does Al-Nitak Akut Khufu mean anything in Sanskrit? And then we did some research. And here is the meaning of the word Al-Nitak, which is linked to 3 words. Al plus Ni plus Tak. So then we need to see what it means, Al. Al means from that place, a specific place, that place which is there. I'll keep it short, obviously, because otherwise. Nai means motion to place, downwards, and I'll make it even shorter for you. Tak is from Takara, which means the star. At this point, we ask ourselves what this Akut means, and to us, Akut's analysis speaks clearly. Akut means, from the Sanskrit dictionary, the who is not afraid of death. So let's review all the precise meaning. Because Akut is like the alpha privative from the Greeks, the deathless one, the one who is not afraid of death, Khufu. So, who built the pyramid? Al-Nitak Akut Khufu, that is, Khufu, who is not afraid of the death, which descends from the star there. And we found out that this thing, strangely, in Sanskrit, it made much sense. Much more sense, a clearer sense of the interpretation that Egyptologists give us for the same situation. Al-Nitak Akut Khufu. From the stars he came down, Khufu, the one who is not afraid of dying, This was the meaning of the sentence. So we said to ourselves, hi, cool, let's try giving it another go. Let's see what happens if we try, for instance, Sakkara. Will the word Sakkara exist in Sanskrit? Look how many meanings Sakkara has. We need to understand the origins of the word, which derives, according to the ancient Egyptians, from Sokar, which is the most widespread theory obviously connected to that. That is, the deity Sokaris or Sokar, who protects the necropolis. Or there is the possibility that the word comes from the name of that place. Actually, what if it was a word, once again Sanskrit, what would this word be?
This is how Sanskrit is made and results in a better translation because Sakkara, it is constituted by two Ks. In the way we pronounce it, it will be Sahakara, and Saha is a personal pronoun. It means he.
Ka in Sanskrit, what would it mean? In Sanskrit, ka means hole, passage, place. What does Ra mean in Sanskrit? Sun, resplendent, sun god, exactly like Ra as translated in Egypt, identical. You see that? With regard to the meaning, I'll try to make it as easy as possible. Also, please keep in mind that Sa or Saha, because Sa is feminine. Saha is masculine, but nothing else changes. It's a mantra, which is this mantra here, which is Satanama. Oh, look, what a surprise its meaning. Infinite, existence, change, and rebirth. NB, Satana. Now you know where the word Satan actually comes from. It comes from there. Ka, sa without H. Ka in Sanskrit means whole, opening. Sakkara or Sahakara, the place, the whole, where Ra manifests itself. Saha. And this translation has a fundamental characteristic because it is the old name of Babylon. P.S. I want to skip this slide. How come that Sakkara, Sahakara, Sakkara is the old name of Babylon? Yes, in the end, it turns out that Sakkara is in Egyptian Sanskrit, the true meaning of the name Babylon. Babylon is Kadingir Ra. Look, Ka and Ra are just the same as we've seen previously. Dingir means God. Translated from English, from Sanskrit to English, the English translates to as the gate of the gods, the place where the gods are seen passing by. Dingir, the god, but it is Ra, the one that shines. Ka Dingir Ra. Once again, you see how strange it is that Sanskrit, the Mesopotamian and Egyptian languages, have the exact same meaning. But that's something really strange. And that's just how it is. Kadingir Ra is the place that makes Ra to come through. This is basically what it means. So Babylon and Sakkara would be the name of two identical cities. Sarcophagus. Sarcophagus means, from Greek sarxphagos, body eater. That is, you take the body, you put it inside the sarcophagus, and the sarcophagus eats the body. Yet, the ancient Egyptians, they didn't call him that. The ancient Egyptians had a completely different way to name it, the Neb-Ankh. The Neb-Ankh, Ankh is life. Therefore, technically, Here we are faced with another meaning, that is, preserver of life and not body eater, and therefore, translating it from Greek already, we have lost the true Egyptian meaning. But neb-ankh in Sanskrit, by chance, does it mean anything at all? So we went looking into it to see what's going on. Does neb, for example, has to do with some word? Does it have meaning? In Sanskrit, we are therefore faced with the concept of hole and or passage. And if this passage was made through a granite container, was intended in a metaphysical, metaphorical, and not in a real sense, we won't know this. But in Saqqara, there are these large strange blocks in which you enter inside. Something happens, and maybe you then end up somewhere else. We cannot know this, but the meaning of neb, yet once again it's passage, and neb-ankh. Through this object you enter it inside, and then it goes somewhere else. This is in Sanskrit, so what we must ask ourselves now, there's a whole series of questions. What we have asked ourselves.
Quello che ci dobbiamo chiedere ora c'è tutta una serie di
For example, how to avoid the second death. Here is the issue with ka and ba. If you die, the ba goes somewhere else, the soul part goes away, migrates. The ka is inside the body, but if the body disintegrates, the ka needs to enter into another body, and if there is no other body available, they would make a statue, golem, of you. So the K enters the statue and is preserved over time. These situations essentially have to do, I must remind you all, they recall the concept of cloning related to what concerns the adductive phenomenon. The ka is taken and is being put somewhere else. AKA, I'm making a copy of the subject. Or else, there is a reference to the concept of the container sans body of the abduction phenomenon. That is, more than one container or body of the soul part, of the spirit part, and so on. This thing is strange. The term serapeum, what the hell could it mean? So, let's look at it from one point of view. The serapeum is that place where these huge blocks, you saw them before during the computer simulation, which look like huge boxes where there is ka, the hole through which Ra passes. This would be the meaning in Sanskrit, basically. And here we must understand something else which is also fundamental. Why? Because the serapeum in Greek is a place, a temple. Just as there is the one in Saqqara, there is also the one in Alessandria. This is the cultural meaning which essentially says that the god Sokar passes from there to Saqqara, and in the Serapeum there is essentially a temple that could contain the bodies of powerful people. Let's see the various meanings in Sanskrit. Se, ra, pe, hum. These are the precise meanings. Se, we have seen it before, being the devotee, the helper. We know that Ra is the being made of light, which is substantially the sun. This other term, which is P, which has to do with to drink. But, above all, this drinking is linked to the concept of Amrita, or Amarta, which is that peculiar nectar that must be drunk by the gods to become immortal. And so, Hum represents basically syllables that represent the Supreme Self, the strength of Shiva. So putting all of these concepts together, then the Serapeum becomes the place where Ra is worshipped. Ra, the one who feeds himself by drinking and becomes God. This would be the Sanskrit meaning. The word pyramid came from a Greek word because there was a dessert which was made in the shape of a cone which the Greeks liked so much. Or it's something that had to do with fire, pyramids, ium, pur, pyre, that is, the flame has to do with the pyramid, but this something totally related to the Greeks. Why? Because the ancient Egyptians didn't call it that, the pyramid. There was a whole different meaning.
La piramide non la chiamavano così. C'era tutto un altro tipo di significato. La piramide,
I do apologize. It is just that I do not want to mess all of these terms up.
Non voglio fare confusione. La piramide.
The pyramid was called Mer, from which the term Sumer derives, and which is the mountain of the gods. So much so that the Sumerians, on their tablets, they had already shown the pyramid and they called it the mountain of the gods. But Mer is Sanskrit stands for Mountain Meru, which is shaped like a pyramid. And somehow it is the mountain that is at the center of the universe because the universe revolves around it. Holy macaroni! It's clear that there is something... It's the same issue of the Greeks with Mint Olympus. In every culture, there is a mountain that is essentially useful because all the gods are in there. They threw themselves there so they won't have to walk amongst humans anymore. This was basically the argument. Hence, the spiritual meaning of Mer or of Meru, from which the word Sumeru comes from, it is the center of the world, the mountain. But how does this mountain look like? It's made like this. There are 7 mountains, one above the other, in steps, and at the top there is a tree made in the shape of a spiral, and basically this is the structure of Meru. That is, it is a stepped pyramid where below you have the kingdom of the dead and there is water in the middle. That is practically what we found under Khafre and under Cheops. Do you also notice that there is a subtle resemblance between ancient Sumerian and ancient Egypt? The word Sphinx. What does the word Sphinx mean? How is the Sphinx called Shesep Anka, which it essentially translates to living image? If we go and look at Sanskrit, we might find out that the meaning is pretty much extremely similar. We have this sound Shesep, Shesha, which means what remains, and Ankh, which means literally eye, image of what remains. So in Sanskrit and in ancient Egyptian, the name of the Sphinx is identical. Oh, holy shit. I would like that this evening the linguists would take full consciousness of this fact and that they would use some common sense when dealing with these terminology. And then we have another big issue to tackle, to solve, which is the issue of the Second Sphinx, which many have talked about it recently. This is basically the starting point from which we started. Damiano Piras's book, in which he basically says what we can read from the screen, that is, in consideration of the fact that the Sphinx is inserted into a sophisticated and well-defined project in the Giza Plateau, and theories according to which in the past the Sphinxes were 2. In his book, a new idea is presented about the possible location of a second Sphinx at Giza. And the hypotheses that are made in this book are of some interest. Piras calls us and says, "Can't you take a look at it, down there, in a spot which I could suggest, in order to see if I am right or not?" There are several hypotheses. Before we start messing with the Synthetic Aperture Radar, SAR, Filippo and I decided to check whether this job was worth doing. And clearly there is a historical hypothesis. The historical hypothesis is linked to the stele of the dream, which is this one. The stele of the dream is basically as seen in the foreground. By looking at it, we must ask ourselves once again why they drew two sphinxes. Because it's the first time that makes us understand that there are two sphinxes who look at each other's back to back, that underneath there is a room that has something to do with it. Something on this side and something on that side. Therefore, the chambers would also be two if the sphinxes were two. So let's go and look closer. At the bottom, the stele is broken. You can't read anything because there was water that came from below and damaged it. And then clearly we must ask ourselves some questions. And here it is written in Pharaoh's dream, Thutmose IV, who goes to sleep in the sun. Probably he had too much to eat. And in that instant, the God appears to him. The God who tells him. Here is written in all of its detail, but I'll tell you in few words. The desert sand covered what was mine splendor, so if you please, dust it off and withdraw my splendor, that is, that you restore the splendor of the Sphinx. And this is why, essentially, the Pharaoh does what he has to do. So, in that specific moment, it is talked about of a single buried Sphinx, and not two. But there is a hypothesis that is a geometric hypothesis. As you can see here, the pyramid of Khafre, the pyramid of Khnum Khufu, here is Sphinx number 1. The second Sphinx would be here at this point. Just by looking at it in this way, you can notice that there is a certain geometry to it. We look at it from 90 degrees away. This is the first, the second would be here. This and this are the vertices of the two pyramids where you pass in the middle. You see Akhet.
This is Akhet, and in one of our tomographies done back in the days with Filippo, we had seen, you can see it clearly by yourself, the first Sphinx here, and then there is another mound here.
He says to me, look, that's right there, where the hypothesis of a second Sphinx should be. Also, because Pires basically says that if I make a circle of this type, here the circle passes through the Sphinx number 1, and therefore the second Sphinx should also be here. So these would reasons based on geometry, about which Filippo will talk better in detail later on, could be identified by some triangulations in which it is shown that there are similar triangles that have the same angles, the same lengths, etc., etc. I won't dwell here now. There are astronomical reasons. Look, here's the sun. It looks bad here from stage, unfortunately. Here is Khafre's pyramid, and here is the first Sphinx, and the other one should be here. These are the two meridians, let's call them that way. They go west-east, therefore the sun rises from here and sets here. This is the sun. This is the earth, and this the sun.
Here, you see, I have written the date that matters to us.
The date when the sun rises, the spring equinox, and all of these things related. And here is the date. When I make this object move, the sun moves, and when it moves, it changes time of the same date. And it turns out, basically, that when I move the sun in a certain way, and I put it here, here I find that it's late hours, the sunset. But when the sun gets here, coincidentally, the sun is born. So there's this corridor, technically, in which the phenomenon occurs. The phenomenon is this one here. There's the sun, then the earth, essentially turns in this way. It bends, but basically what happens is that during these specific dates, which they are also written in ancient Egyptian texts, the sun rises in the face of one of the sphinxes, and it should die in the face of another sphinx. So there are two sphinxes because God is born and dies on the same day and has two solar boats, one that he needs to be born and the other that he needs to die. So there were possibilities.
This is the mound, you see it? And under this mound there could be something.
Under this hill, the word below under suffered some misinterpretations. Underneath doesn't mean under the hill, it means underneath the hill. That is, not inside, nor within, under the mound, which is not the same thing. We actually do want to clarify in detail this misunderstanding today, later on. Here it is, seen from another side. We realize that this one almost looks like a geometrical structure. Someone thought that it was treated as a landfill, and in part, it probably is. You can see it in the old photos of a certain antiquity. This aerial photo shows the mound. In this situation here, there have been excavations over time because everything was covered. This mound could not be seen, or in any case, seen very poorly. And next to the hill, there are also some holes, structures that go underground. Let's take note of it by looking at the images that we first see from the outside. In this old photograph, which, by the way, it's a composite image photography. It is true, but it's a photo montage anyway, because this plane here, it is not in the originals, which means that the pilot who stuck on this photograph is plane. It is also the same pilot who took the photograph, so it couldn't be possible that the photograph was there because he had the plane here. But here you can't see it. You can't see much at all. So then someone immediately said, no, the second pyramid does not exist because the mood number 2 is not there. Please pay attention. We have never said that it is inside that mound, that is within, but below, which is something else. When we look at this photograph, which is quite ancient essentially, and we look distractedly, yes, now that we know that something is there, we see that there is something. But if we look at it better, we see that there is a depression, a hole. It was dug around and no one dug this mound. How strange! Before, therefore, this mound was always been there, but essentially in the ancient times this mound wasn't there. You couldn't see it? That does not mean it was not there. Does this mound has to do with the second Sphinx, yes or no? Yes and no. For what reason? Because there's nothing down here. Within, it's below. At least, these are the images we take. The plano altimetric survey images, and we see that here there is 78 meters. Here we are 78 meters high. This Sphinx here is at about 20 meters high. So you see that there is a difference in height, substantially, between these two hypotheses. Here, we were able to do some calculations with the computer, and how we move from mound, you see the heights change. So we make a kind of contour lines. Then, Filippo rightly told me, why should we make all of this mess? We have the radar, let's calculate it with the SAR. Let's calculate the situation as it is. And the situation is as follows. Look, I'll show you here. This is, let's say, what the radar sees. Do you see this rectangle here? This rectangle here is a rectangle in which many tests have been done. One here, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. Many sections. These sections were placed one after the other. So from here to here is the difference there is height from the beginning to the end of the rectangle. The Sphinx is this one, or to better put it, the mound, so to speak, is this one. You see that there seems to be huge difference in height, but you have to expand this thing a lot to understand its proportions. We're down here. Here's the thing we need to go and see. And so at this point we went to look for... So, first of all, the eye of the satellite sees this. And with Filippo, it is said to do let's make a cut here and let's make a cut here. Take the A as a reference point and let's look normally how we did it, what's underneath.
And we realize that underneath there is the same thing, type of vertical shafts that are under the Sphinx, that we know of.
Look at that, how strange. This is one of the two tomographies, the other is tilted at 90 degrees. And you can see very well that there is something coming down here. Let's see it in 3 dimensions. Basically, in 3 dimensions, we mounted them this way. Let's spin the tomography slowly and see that we can see some interesting things. Here, there are holes in the middle. There are some things, here are holes in the middle. On the other side, the same. You see this here? It's a long room with a ceiling that goes up and down, and that goes right below the tube, the empty hole. We can also see it from the other side. As soon as possible, the turn is over. Here we can observe it still, simple. But we can also see this in motion.
We try to obtain a 3-dimensional image.
We are looking at what is underneath this place. We are not looking at what is above. But here, too, you see, there is a precise space, there are holes of vertical paths, some stuff that looks like vertical rooms. Look how well you can see here the tube coming down, and here's the room at the end. Do you see? Let's see if it looks better from here. Here it is, the room that descends, the room with the ceiling that rises and falls. Once again, we can see it in a better and faster way, maybe from here. Can you see? There's something actually going down here, a hole. This is what can happen. So if we see it better, let's go up close. There is the hole that goes down. There are these rooms, these hypotheses of rooms, this horizontal one that is always there. Do you see it? It goes up and down, up and down. But what is this stuff here? So we said, let's try to do a horizontal tomography. We've done a lot of them, but then we'll take these ones. And here we look. Maybe you still don't see anything, but I saw this thing here, and I said right away, this is the big buttocks of the Sphinx. This could be one of the arms. The other arm is here. Here could be the head. Here the big buttocks. Let's see it better. Let's take a 3D image and let's see it superimposed. It looks a lot like. That is, the proportions are respected. Here's the big buttocks, and here's the head, and here is an arm. At first, we thought, we actually don't know this yet, that this luminous part here is the arm that is missing from there, that it broke and moved. I shall remind you that in the original Sphinx the 2 arms are not there. They had been destroyed 13,500 years ago by the issues that happened there. So maybe this arm here was the one that it was supposed to be there. There's even the same little box on the side. Here, there's there a little paw that is this one here. Do you see it? So it's a phenomenon of pareidolia, right?
We could say, because the computer will tell you so, or someone else tells you so.
So let's go and try to see what's up there above. We find something interesting. Look, see? If this is the head, the little head, this is the body, this is the arm, here is the body in front. Here it is the rear leg. And here it is the surface of the back. This would be the head. To do this operation, we must apply some changes about how the computer represents the data. because originally what you can do is to look below. To see at the beginning, at the top above, it looks bad, and then we have to change some parameters. Filippo was able to do it, this important thing. And so we began to investigate, look, there's something there. So let's work on it a bit, and we discover that in the chest there's this stain here. It is as if this were the position of another plaque, of another stele, or of a hole, of a room in the middle. But here we begin to see the images of little head, which is this one, and then there is the body, which is this one. We continue to try to understand more and more what was happening. We begin to see one eye, the other eye, the headdress that is not yet clearly visible. But down here, inside here, there is a hole, and we don't know what this is, but it's always there in all tomographies. Here is the paw. The other paw should be here, basically, and there is a structure of this type. The nose, the mouth. So let's try to see it even better, closer, and we realize that the eye is not this one. The eye is here, and the other eye is here. This thing here is a hole in the head. If that is the head of the Sphinx, if you ask it to the computer tells you that it looks at it this other way. From here, you can see a little better.
This one is squared shaped. It is not the eye is this one. But the computer, at this stage, makes mistakes and shows us how basically this could be a drawing of a face, made by us as we were children, basically.
But let's start getting closer. Look what's there. There is also the nature type of the headdress, of the hypothetical Sphinx. This shows it increasingly as a square. There is a room that is inside the head, and here is the eye, and here are these structures which are the mouth, the nose, here is the eye, the nose will be here, and so on. The computer at this moment thinks that the eye is long, but we will discover that it is not like that. The eye is here in Strad, but the computer says that he has discovered that somehow there is a structure created so sideways that it looks very much like the headdress of the Sphinx. But we didn't tell him anything. We just told him, look at this tomography to see if, from its point of view, it looks like a face or something else. And then we tried to take, and did better, the tomography scans from above, and we analyzed the head, or what we think be the head. This is one of the two little paws. The other paw should be here, which substantially you cannot see. Show me if by changing the gray tones I can see the head. And the end result was, firstly, this one. And I should point out that there are two here things that might be guessing the eyes. The mouth and nose are still not clear, but we were impressed by this thing here that's in the middle. What the hell could that be? That stuff there in the middle. And we start to see that this stuff is right where the little snake is usually found, and which comes out of the little head of the Sphinx. Do you see? And the eye becomes clearer and clearer. The nose and mouth are even better. In the end, there are really two eyes here. Do you see? And the little snake that comes out from here, do you see it? Little by little we moved forward. The details of what could have been the vision of the Sphinx, that we knew of, seemed to be, coincidentally, by this whole series of spots that we saw here. Yet, even more, we tried to improve the tomography. Do you see this strip here? This strip here has nothing to do with the Sphinx, but it must be, I tell you what it is, a low wall that is underneath, and that the Sphinx is inside something a little lower, like the other one we know. And this is the wall. Still at the center, we have this strange thing. You can see it here too, and you should begin to see even better that here the headdress is darker. Always trying to go looking towards the best situation possible, let's take a good look at the cap, head. Let me show you the headdress. It's here, this way. And perhaps we see it even better if we put on it the true Sphinx and the proportions match perfectly. That's exactly how it is. If you put it to the side, now you can start to understand the relationship between this thing and that thing. And as we move forward, we arrive at a result, which is the final result, that is this one. It is clear, it is evident that there cannot be another explanation. This one can be seen very well, along with all the necessary streaks that should be there. It is the head of this object that is exactly identical to what we know as the Second Sphinx. So there are hypotheses.
Allora, esistono delle ipotesi.
The hypotheses they are. That's not true. There is no Second Sphinx. These are some debris that they have, by chance, took the form of a Second Sphinx. If Zahi Hawass likes this version, we couldn't care a bit less. Yet at this point, though, we need to give conclusions to our work. And the conclusions of our work could be these. It shouldn't have ended like this. That is, the two of us digging, because basically we have a certain age and basically he would be better to avoid. But surely, after what Filippo will tell you, one conclusion is certain. The conclusion we can make is the following. It will end like this. Thank you.
Evviva!
Ah, ok, ok. Grazie a tutti.
Thank you all.
Grazie a tutti. Io ringrazio Corrado.
I thank Corrado for the very beautiful presentation.
Molto bella. E adesso
Now, it's a hard task.
impresa.
Undertaking after Corrado.
Insomma. Ok. Non si sente? Si sente?
Can you hear it? Okay.
Allora,
So,
sì, adesso
Corrado showed
prima
before
Corrado ha fatto vedere
all the things we
tutte
did,
le cose che abbiamo fatto, specialmente sulla seconda Sfinge.
especially on the
Allora,
Second Sphinx.
il
So,
compito mio, ho pensato di fare un
I thought I'd do a
recap
recap of
di tutto
everything we
quello che
did
abbiamo
on
fatto
this
in questo anno.
last year.
Molte cose le abbiamo dette
We have also
anche
said
in
many
varie
things in various
presentazioni,
presentations,
però è
but it is
giusto che
right
in questa sede
that here we must summarize what we have done,
riassumere quello che abbiamo fatto, che
about which, in my
secondo me,
opinion,
abbiamo
we've
fatto
done
un
plenty
po'
of
di
things.
cose. E quindi
And so
noi
we start again from
ripartiamo
space,
dallo
because we
spazio,
have
perché noi abbiamo usato
used some satellites which are satellites
dei satelliti che hanno a bordo
that have
dei
synthetic
radar
aperture radars on
apertura
board.
sintetica.
And in practice, through these radars,
attraverso questi radar noi abbiamo cercato di effettuare dei calcoli.
We tried to make additional calculations to try to look at what it is inside the matter.
Quello che sta dentro la materia. I calcoli aggiuntivi che abbiamo fatto sono quelli.
The additional calculations that we have done are to estimate the vibrations through the estimation of so-called doppler anomalies.
Delle anomalie Doppler in modo da avere
in order to have a reliable estimate of surface vibrations.
Delle vibrazioni superficiali. Il cosiddetto ripple superficiale attraverso questa informazione è una statistica.
The so-called surface ripple through this information is a sufficient statistic to derive the tomographies that are underground.
Le tomografie che stanno sottoterra. Allora, quindi noi
I always like to put this slide because
mettere questa slide perché qui noi
here we can understand what happens.
Il radar ad
Synthetic Aperture Radar, the word says it itself about.
La parola stessa, il concetto di apertura. Il concetto di apertura è
the concept behind aperture is connected to the concept of resolution. The resolution, which is measured in meters, is the minimum distance for two objects to be detected detachedly at a certain distance. And it is rightly a measurement of the details. For example, about information, which in this case is made up of electromagnetic images. Electromagnetic images that are provided by radars. So the higher the aperture, the higher the resolution. Here we simply show a target, which is this red cube. This red cube is acquired by the onboard radar of this airplane. This airplane, which can also be the satellite, pass and take a photograph of the cube. Why do we set a target? Because it's easier. It is easier to do the analytical model by putting a target alone, and then it is extended out to all the other targets, which is the sum of the radar response of a single target. So we can understand that we have two types of resolution, one in azimuth and the other in range. The azimuth is the one in the direction of flight path. That of range is perpendicular to the direction of flight. We see that the azimuth resolution is proportional to the aperture. So it would be how much orbit I travel to generate a radar image. So this is important. And we rightly see that we have learned a lot of things from this slides. We have learned that to see things, to look at the details, but to also understand what is happening. There is a fundamental mathematical operation to be done, which is the operation of the Fourier transform. Without the transform of Fourier, you can't see anything. And in fact, the Fourier transform is connected to the perception of reality. For example, you can do experiments by taking an analog camera. If we remove the lens from the camera, that is, piece of glass, and we take a photo, we see that we don't see anything. This is because the piece of glass, i.e. the lenses, optics, physically carry out a Fourier transform. In this case, in the radar, the Fourier transform, together with all the others. Compensations, which however are peripheral. Orbital compensations, atmospheric compensations, compensations of imperfect sphericity of the orbits. So you put under it the so-called digital elevation model, a DEM, to focus the image. And in this case, you see that the echo radar of a single block is this whole function shown here. It is acutely called a wave function through a two-dimensional Fourier transform process. We managed to focus these waves in this plot, which is here. So this is a very important thing. So what did we do? Let me explain. About this plot that we see, radar theory says the plot must be stationary. So at the moments when, in the 10-15 seconds in which the radar passes and takes the image, this block must stay still. If it moves, it's a problem. If it moves, it is a problem for some, but it has been a virtue for us. Because that slight movement made all of us to be here. Together, to understand what we have achieved. Thanks to the movement of the Earth, just imagine how sensitive it is, seeing things from space. This micrometric ripple, considering the anomalies Doppler given from physical movement of the Earth that is on the surface, we managed to obtain the information of what lies below. And in this case, seeing the face of the Sphinx from the front, which we will see here. Based on the work of Corrado, we evolve it and apply to it facial recognition algorithms. Let's see what happens. So we use these images. These are electromagnetic images in color. An American provider called Capella Space provided these images to us free of charge, which we kindly thank. We didn't just use Capella Space only, but we also used other satellite systems, such as ISI, or the Italian Pride, Cosmos SkyMed, and Cosmos SkyMed second generation. And then after collecting all of this data, we worked them out. Here you can see the Giza Plateau. It's a rather special photo. As you see, each photo has its own projective plane. Normal cameras have a central projection. Radar has another type of projection called slant. In a slant projection, you see this effect on the pyramids e.g. It's called the foreshortening effect, which can also become a layover. That is, some parts of the pyramid become compressed, because there is nothing you can do upon taking a picture. A photograph that uses a two-dimensional Fourier transformation of a three-dimensional environment. Alas, a dimension gets always lost, because an actual projection happens, which the camera sees on a 2D plane, and therefore one dimension is lost. That's a two-dimensional image, it's not three-dimensional. To make it three-dimensional, there are other techniques, for example, photogrammetry, radargrammetry, interferometry, or differential interferometry. But those are other things. Okay, I'll finish my recap for you. We have to come to a conclusion. Me and Corrado started back in the day, and we will conclude here today. That is, we will no longer do tomographies on the Giza Plateau, because we now have discovered most of the things that we had decided to do. It is pointless for us. At most, if they give us permission, we will personally go and dig. I'll personally start digging. Not an issue. And if you wish to give me a hand, we all shall go together there to dig. We will all be there.
Andiamo tutti quanti a scavare. Tutti quanti andiamo lì. E quindi un po' come orgoglio nazionale.
A bit for my national pride, as I was born in L'Aquila, in Abruzzo. And therefore, this is the Gran Sasso. I will keep on pitching this slide as long as I live. This is my tomography of Gran Sasso. The Gran Sasso d'Italia holds a project wanted by Antonino Zicici, which also involved the making of the Gran Sasso tunnel. This one here, it's the tunnel. And in the tunnel, there is the Gran Sasso laboratory, Einfen, the laboratory where the so-called Majorana particles are studied. Let's dwell on the Majorana particles. Otherwise, we will open a path, which will only waste our time. So today we stay focused on the Giza Plateau. Yet in any case, this is a model that I wanted to show you as certain proof of the functionality of the technique we use, where we can see the laboratory. Are the most important structures of the laboratory. We see it a little blurred, but that's okay, as I never did other tomographing images, even though I would like to do it with our upgraded technique. This is software 1.0, but then we also implemented other changes to be more precise. But above all, we worked for increasing its speed. Compared to last year, where it took us a month to do this, today with the reprogram of all the software in C++, with CUDA libraries, we managed to get results. For example, for 1 month down to only 3 or 4 hours. I had to get on it, so to speak. I haven't slept for a while. But I did it anyway. I transformed the software from MATLAB to C++, from C++ to CUDA, and now it's just a hardware issue. So from the hardware, we would like to get to real time, or almost real time. We're at 3-4 hours now. Putting the right hardware in it, we could even get to 3-4 seconds. Surely doable, nonetheless. Then, just to show you something else, of which I started playing with it a little. This is an oil extraction facility. We don't have the truths here, because in any case, I also did various pilot tests, about which, unfortunately, I cannot show you the CT scans with the truth, because various people who asked me to do some tests got me under NDA, and therefore I can't, not disclosure agreement, therefore the truths are missing, but in short, they are there. So this is a plant of oil extraction. There is the fence. This is a radar image. And here is the well. There is there. This here is called a tomographic line, from which we are going to calculate the surface vibration along this line. And then we invert the model. That is, we apply a Fourier transform. A one-dimensional FT Fourier transform. In one dimension, of course, because we are going to evaluate the surface vibrations. And so we, more or less noisily, we managed to obtain the tomography of what is underneath. Do you see? This is the well, or rather, the section of the well. NB. The well is 2047 in diameter max. Think how precise it is. Down here are the oil tanks. Up here there is water. This is all water, see? We can understand where the water is, understand the consistency of material, understand if there are empty or solid spaces. See the internal structures. So this is a case study expandable to various ways of working in the civil engineering industry. For example, in this case scenario, oil extraction. And rightly, the work in the future that we must do. Okay, we have many tomography scans, but these are energetic reflectivities, and they are coherent. That is in the sense that I have the phase and module, which are complex numbers NB. In this case, it is shown the representation of the module. But I can try to guess the type of the material inside. Within matter. And we are working on this. So we could use hybrid systems with dictionaries, also using techniques assisted by artificial intelligence. I'm a bit against artificial intelligence, but I'm starting to understand that, since it is the expression of collective consciousness of all people, then it can help us to reduce calculation times. So basically now we have to understand if it's possible to discriminate the types of material within this. A sandwich of matter. We already see water, we see oil, not an issue. But can we understand what's inside there? And that's kind of what I'm doing, trying to expand recognition algorithms. And we have applied these recognition algorithms to the Sphinx, which later we will see. So we are able to understand the various areas, the various zones of density of matter. We have shown you these tomography scans, also in other events, even outside Italy. But this is the closing conference of the works. Therefore, I have to show them here. And so here, we find ourselves considering Khafre's pyramid, this one here. And from Khafre's pyramid, as Corrado told us before, you see that there are these large structures that come down. But what are they? Let's see about this later. What are they for? The certain thing is that from my point of view, I can't say for sure, but from my point of view, and the point of view of the measurements that we did, they exist. And they have a particular nature, shape, form. We're here in the center. There are some things that are really stiff, which come down and which have a particular attention to symmetry. And you see that they have a shape, a spiral-like shape, that goes deep down. They are there, right in front of you. Everyone can see them. In practice, we notice that there are structures in the end. These massive rooms here that we share and put under a 3D model last year. These huge rooms are clearly there. It's futile refusing the results. There's no doubt about them. Do you see? They are present. Here they are. Then there are other things that are found here, but in any case, to be sure, to study its functionality, to know why they are there, what are they for, we have to go in person. We have to go and see it in situ, no other way. And so we saw that these structures were also on all the other pyramids. For example, this is the Menkora pyramid, smaller, but they are there. And they have the same, that is the same modus operandi. Vertical structures, spiral-shaped. The large rooms below, that we have calculated to be to a depth of approximately 600 to 650 meters, which is a significant depth. And then underneath, we still don't know. Something very important to pay attention to is this red line here. And in this topography, the pyramid cannot be seen. You can't see it because of the projective effect due to radar focusing, which is called layover. And practically the pyramid is squeezed. It is compressed on the ground. And so what we see is the information of the pyramid compressed on the ground, only in some angles. We are able to see what's inside the pyramid. And we use those particular angles, the so-called beam radar. We used to estimate what was inside Cheops, what was inside Khafre, and other things too. In these corners, we preferred corners with very low angle of incidence, where the layover is very pronounced, to try to understand in a simpler way and easier what was underneath at very great depths. Do you see here? We always come back to the fact that these structures are there. And in any case, there are rooms at their end. And so this is the Sphinx, the existing Sphinx. I have now started to call it the first Sphinx. after this work, because I am practically certain that on the other sides, I'll show you where the second Sphinx is. So you see, the first Sphinx has some same characteristics, which are the ones that Corrado has also mentioned during his presentation. That is, these columns that descend and these structures that are seen at a certain height, at a certain depth. These here. And then there are also these other structures here. These here. And so we must try to understand what they are. But trying to understand what they are means entering inside the Sphinx. No other choice. We can take measurements. You see, by changing the orientation of the tomographic line, the internal tomography, that is, the orientation of the tomography, changes. Probably in a while this movement could become uniform, continuous. Because having decreased the calculation time, we could easily move this line and being able to view the result in real time of what is below. So we are working on this now. Make the results real time. And try to make an estimate of the type of material underneath. This is quite difficult, but I'm confident that we will make it.
Grazie.
Thank you.
E quindi andando a collezionare tutti questi risultati che abbiamo, mi sono dimenticato.
I forgot to tell you about this line. Located here.
Si trova qui. È importante perché questa linea va a coincidere.
It is important because this line coincides with the section of a kind of plate or basement made of very large bricks.
Mattoni molto grandi che chi va sulla piana di
Whoever goes to the Giza Plateau sees it.
mattoni enormi.
These enormous bricks have a significant thickness. And this thickness is this one, can you see it? This is the section of the so-called plate, which is located below, where the pyramids were built on top. And so we need to understand how this plate interacts with the structures underneath. To see the rocks or every single stone, that would be a bit problematic. Yet once you see the overall results of these gigantic ancient things that go down below, it looks really good on the screen, you see. There is a sort of spiral that goes down. We must go there and check. And so on this side here, we have reconstructed the three-dimensional model. You see here, in this tomography, we see the pyramid because this is favorable radar geometry, in which you can see the pyramid. Not all radar geometries are capable of showing the pyramid. There are some satellite images where the pyramid can be seen very well, and other images satellite, especially those with a very small angle of incidence, where the pyramid is projected with an extreme layover, that do not show it. But we can see better what's underneath. This is just to explain how these things work. And we used the same technique to see what was underneath in the so-called Second Sphinx. Therefore, we took satellite images especially with an exaggerated small beam. Exaggeratedly natural beam. The most natural beam possible that was available. From the provider of the radars. And thanks to the intuition by Damiano Pires, it became a personal interest for us, as a personal matter, so we went to see what we could find, and sincerely, I didn't expect it. I was expecting something like, okay, Corrado, let's do these 4 tomographies, because we won't find anything anyway. Let's see. Everything started, at least my study, from observing, because I don't understand anything. Of that is on the screen. I am not an Egyptologist. I'm not a historian, I'm just an engineer. So I don't understand anything. About history. If you ask me a history question, I won't answer, because I'm not an expert. So I started from this. This is like a scientific article. Bibliography. And you can practically see them here. 2 sphinxes. It seems to me that this was found near the Sphinx. In front of. So it's a business card. It is bibliography. It's a scientific article for me. We can notice that there are 2 sphinxes, one looking one way and one looking the other way. This is the drawing of the stele of the dream. One sphinx facing this way and the other facing the other way. Then I did some bibliography, and rightly so. We started from Stele of the Dream until arriving at the Book of Pyrrhus. Awesome. So we took on this book, the most modern one, as a reference point, and start reading it. So then we pass by this moment, which is from conjecture to objective measures, i.e. information, electrical information. Because this is all electrical information, electromagnetic waves banging around on Earth. They return modified. In Doppler, therefore, modified in frequency, and this modification is what we used to see underground. And then, the first thing I've done is this. I said, okay, let's see what happens from a geometric point of view. I always like to see things with geometry, that is, seeing where we are. Mark the territory. And so we basically started to draw lines. The first thing is, let's draw a line from the existing Sphinx until half of the Khafra side. This is Khafra's side, half of the Khafra side. Let's see what happens on the other side. Half side of Cheops is drawn to infinity. Therefore, there is an indeterminacy. But this indeterminacy could be resolved in this way. If I draw a line from the head of the existing Sphinx until intersects this indeterminacy, I arrive at a specific point. I can stop here. And practically I realize that these 2 segments, A and B, they are parallel, perfectly parallel. There's no doubt about it. C and D are parallel. Then we begin to understand that, oh well, the measurements are different. Clear. But if the measurements are different, let's see if the ratios are the same. And so we basically see that A divided by C was perfectly equal to B divided by D. And I also counted that little piece of space, those segments that were going to end, up to where the stone of coverage practically was off the edge we see today. So it includes the outboard given by
dalla copertura, dal
The cover made in granite or cladding stone.
o di pietra. Non so di che materiale.
I'm not entirely sure of what material it is.
E quindi
You see here that
vedete che E è uguale ad F, poi
E is equal to F, then everything comes in cascade. E is equal to F, G divided by A equals H divided by B. G divided by A equals H divided by B. All the ratios are perfect.
Ma allora
But then let's see if we can understand if the angles
gli angoli mantengono
maintain the symmetry.
una simmetria. Assolutamente sì, perché giustamente
Absolutely yes, because geometry rightly tells us that if we have
dei segmenti
parallel segments,
poi tutti gli angoli
then all the angles follow the parallelism.
il parallelismo. Alfa 1 uguale ad alfa 2.
Alpha 1 equals alpha 2. Alpha 3 equals alpha 4. Alpha 5 equals alpha 6.
Passiamo alle aree.
Let's move on to areas, because geometric areas are more precise.
Se io ho degli errori
If I have errors on the lines, areas amplify this error.
Ok? Quindi praticamente siamo
So basically, the two of us went to figure out
in due dimensioni da
what happens from dimensions 1D to 2D.
e quindi andiamo a vedere che
So here we can notice that
ok, ci sono delle aree che
the
sono
areas are
uguali.
also the same.
Area 1 è uguale ad
Area 1 is the same as Area 2.
è uguale ad area
Area
4.
3 is the same as Area 4.
Quindi vedete c'è una certa simmetria che,
So you see there is a certain symmetry from geometric point of view. That is, if I move even 20, 30 meters from this circle,
da questo cerchio, questo è un'ellisse
which is an ellipse of indetermination, everything we have said falls.
cioè tutto quello che abbiamo detto
That is,
qui
everything we have said here is true in one point,
in un punto qua,
right here.
altrimenti non è vero.
Otherwise, that wouldn't be true, because everything falls apart.
Si rompe
That is, all the symmetry breaks, parallelisms break down,
non funziona più niente.
and then nothing works anymore.
E allora queste
So these
coordinate
coordinates took us right there,
portavano proprio
at the famous mount.
alla famosa montagnella. Su questa montagnella
On this little mound, many things have been said
tutti i
and all the
debunkers
debunkers
del mondo si
of the
sono
world.
scatenati su
They went wild on this little mound, saying that we are liars, and that
cose false e che
because the mound
come la montagnella nel
in 1912 was not there,
1912 non c'è la seconda
then also the second Sphinx doesn't exist,
perché la montagnella non c'è.
because the mountain wasn't there.
Capito?
Understood.
Era e come no?
Obviously, that was actually there.
E quindi
And so,
questa montagnella
this is the mount
che la vediamo da qua
that we can see on the screen.
l'abbiamo studiata,
That we studied.
questa qui,
This one here,
l'abbiamo studiata un po' più da vicino.
we studied it much closer.
L'abbiamo studiata con radar.
We studied it with the radar. And so we have
Abbiamo
employed these satellite images
queste immagini satellitari
that represent the
che
area of
rappresentano
interest
la zona di interesse per capire un po'
to
come
better understand how
andavano
things
le
are.
cose. All'inizio
At first, these were the first things that came out.
questo è un risultato
This is a very low
bassissimo di
resolution
risoluzione,
result.
ma vedete si cominciano a vedere
But you see,
delle
we're starting to
cose
see things
qui,
here.
i cosiddetti
The so-called
pozzi
wells
che
that Corrado
ha
showed you.
mostrato Corrado. E praticamente questi pozzi
And practically, these
fanno
wells refer
capo
to something
a un
that is
qualche
above.
cosa che si trova sopra, questa qui, che è la Sfinge.
This is the Sphinx, and these are the wells that are under it.
Stanno sotto la Sfinge. Lo diciamo adesso, dopo che
We can
dopo la
say now,
presentazione di
after the presentation of Corrado, that that is the Sphinx.
E quindi
We
questi
managed
pozzi
to capture
siamo riusciti, 3 o 4 ne sono,
3 or 4
che
wells which are located
sono
here.
posizionati qui. 1, 2, 3 e forse
1, 2, 3, and maybe even 4.
vediamo.
Then we'll see.
Ci sono 3.
Surely there are at least 3 of them.
Eccoli
Here
qui.
they are.
Andando avanti con i calcoli, siamo riusciti
With the
a
progress of our calculations, we managed to estimate a sort of low-resolution silhouette.
qualcosa iniziale,
Something
dove,
initial at first, where there is a
dove
head,
c'è una testa, un corpo
a body and
e
paws.
delle zampe. Quindi tre cose.
So
Testa,
three
corpo e
things:
zampe.
head, body, and paws.
Riusciamo a vederlo,
We can see it,
giustamente,
rightly,
attraverso la tomografia
through the
orizzontale.
horizontal tomography that Corrado
Corrado
showed
ci ha
us.
fatto vedere prima. Questi mi
Before,
servono come preambolo.
these serve me as a
Riusciamo a
preamble.
comprendere, ok,
We can understand
zampe, testa,
paws,
corpo
head and body,
e magari
perhaps structures found inside the body.
qua dentro. Perché le immagini
In here, as acoustic images represent the
rappresentano la materia
matter
sempre
always is
trasparente,
transparent,
più o meno trasparente.
more or less transparent.
E quindi
And so,
andando
moving on
avanti
with the
di
work,
lavoro, questa è una linea
this is a
tomografica
tomographic line that we chose,
proprio sotto
right
la
under the
montagnella,
mound,
per
to
vedere
actually see the
proprio
mound split in
spaccare la
two.
montagnella in due. Siamo riusciti a
We managed to achieve
ad avere questa tomografia
this
qui,
tomography here,
dove ci abbiamo la testa,
where we see the head, the body,
il corpo,
and the paws,
e le
1 and
zampe,
2.
una e due.
Here they are.
Eccole qua.
Here, the head.
La testa. Quindi noi ci
So we'll focus on the head
concentreremo
too.
sulla testa per capire
Understand what kind
che tipo
of
di
monument is.
monumento è. Che sta qui la testa.
The head.
Questa è la posizione della testa.
This is the position of the head.
La sommità della
The top of the
testa,
head.
secondo i calcoli,
According to
si
calculations,
trova- questo è il piano campale,
this is the natural ground level.
questa è la montagnella.
This is the
Si
mound.
trova sotto
It is located under the mound,
la
but not
montagnella,
inside.
ma non dentro, dal piano campale in giù.
From the natural ground level down.
Perché io sono
I am
convinto,
convinced,
ma su questo
but I have to do further research on
devo
this,
fare ulteriori studi, che questa montagnella,
that this little mound, or at least much of this mound, is made from smerino.
fatta da smerino. Il
Smerino,
termine tecnico
a
è
spoiler pile of previously excavated earth.
agli inizi del secolo
At the beginning of the century, there was a strong campaign, a big cleanup campaign
di pulizia di questi
of these mastabes,
queste mastabe. E praticamente dalle
and they
mastabe
practically
hanno
pulled out a
tirato
lot of
fuori tanto
material from the
materiale.
mastabas.
Tutto quel materiale non sapevano
They didn't know
dove
where to put all that
metterlo
material,
sul piano.
and little by little,
L'hanno
they put
rimesso
it there.
ma per un motivo.
But for a
Guardate
reason,
questa
look at this. This is
questo
smerino,
vedete?
see?
Ta, 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 ta. Poi qua vai da una parte
Then here you go
e vai
one way and you go the
dall'altra,
other.
vai così,
You go like this.
ok? E quindi
And
quando
therefore,
andremo a Giza,
when we go to Giza,
vedremo proprio
we will see
la
the composition of
composizione di questo
this soil,
del materiale
of the material of which
con cui è composto, di cui è composta
this mound is composed of.
questa montagnella. Probabilmente non è tutto smerino.
It's probably not all smerino.
C'era già
Probably
un
there was
po',
already
e
something
poi
that
ci
they
hanno messo sopra altro materiale.
placed on top other material. So this one could be a good compromise
Per far quadrate tutte le cose, perché
to make all things right, because this is smerino. This one here,
probabilmente questo è smerino, questo è
probably this one it's
probabilmente
smerino.
potrebbe
This
essere
is
anche questo, ma
smerino.
non tutto.
Probably could be this too, but not everything. So we have to check carefully what's underneath.
Ok, quindi il corpo è qui
Okay, so the body is here, and
e poi ci sono le zampe.
then there are the
Questa qui,
paws.
rispetto
So this
alla
one here,
montagnella,
compared to the mount,
questa è la
that's the Sphinx, also that's that.
Poi facciamo un po' di
Then we do some data
collezionamento di
collection.
dati. Vedete questo
Do you see this thing
questa
here?
cosa qui? Noi la vediamo sempre.
We see it all the time.
E quindi dentro ci sono delle strutture.
And so there are structures inside, you see.
E quindi
And then we correlate
li mettiamo in correlazione. Quello che abbiamo trovato prima
what we found before
con la Sfinge.
with the Sphinx. Do you see? This is a bit of a complete map of what's there. Then from here, we went here. We made various cuts. We tried various tomographic lines to try to see the Sphinx on different angles. We can always see the head, the body and legs. With the face slightly more shifted to try to look at it from the front, because the idea was always that of bifacial recognition software to it. And that's something else. That's another result. By moving the tomographic line slightly, like this. And then we did various measures. And in this case, you see, we have it facing us. The face. The left eye. This. The right eye. The serpent. This. The nose. The mouth. Then everything else. Part of the neck. And then the body. The important thing. Paw 1 and Paw 2. Seen from the front. In order to overlay them perfectly, we would have needed another tomography a little further in front. Or a photograph a little more shifted. But let's say we put them in a good contrast comparison. The two paws. Here they are. Then this one here is the side view of the second Sphinx. Here we have other tomographies 1, 2, and 3. Here we have interpret these as shown. You see, here we have the left front view profile. Left, right profile. That is this and this. And then the front. The face. The face with the two ears. With these two things here. 1 and 2. What's important? The serpent. 1 and 2, there. And here's the snake. First approach with recognition software. Facial recognition, but target recognition. Recognition of structures. Analysis of the proportionality of the statue. We put it in the software. We put tomography scans on it. And you see these? They are the hotspots that the software has generated. So we automatically arrived at a global score. Probability that it is a Sphinx 72%. Probability that it is a Sphinx with a male head 46%. Female head 26%. That is here. This is a Sphinx. We all have all the points of proportionality, but on a recognition model. 78, 50, and 28. 78% that it is a sphinx, 50% that it is a sphinx with a male head, 28% that it is a sphinx with a female head. Volumetric 3D reconstruction. We fed the software all the tomographies. And this is the outcome. Oh well, the pars are disproportionate, see? But in short, it is Doppler tomography taken from 600 kines. Let's go up. 83% compatibility with Sphinx-like type of structure. 50 Europe plus 29. Symmetry index 0.91. High. In the high range. I'm not saying that. The computer is saying it. To me, it's aseptic. So the debunkers can take it out on the computer. Do you see a bit of disproportionality, of reconstruction? That's right, because they are measures made with the smerino above on the mount. In short, there are some errors, but this is totally normal. We kept on changing the parameters on the software to try to do things better, but here, in the end, the reconstruction mesh. It's a sphinx. You can see it's a sphinx. I think it's clear to see that it is a sphinx. And then if the paw is a little more like this or a little more like that, then it's not a big deal. Then, after the body, we concentrated on the face. We want to see the face. These are the software that are also used from the police to those who carry out assessments on face recognition. In short, there are many software that can be downloaded on GitHub. Here they are, standalone software. You can practically see there. It's the Fibonacci spiral, because we have this symmetry that comes from the Fibonacci spiral. It is called the golden ratio. Eye line, nose base, and mouth line. So the ratio we got is matte 068, 062. This is the ratio of the measurement we made. Hypothetically, the ratio of the Sphinx, of the face of the Sphinx. This one here. And then we always say, these are the eyes. This is the nose, the mouth, and the big snake. We always take it, the snake, as a reference point, because it can be seen very well. And there is also the ear. And there is also another thing. This thing that you see that resembles a hat. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's called. So I don't even care. Spoiler, the aileron. These things here. We did some other comparisons. This is the face reconstructed by 3D meshing. Rightly so, it is more precise compared to tomography scans we have. So here we tried a complete chain from the satellite to the 3D reconstruction software, and then we have the results. We did other tests. Eye line, nose base, mouth line. This is another type of approach. I'll summarize a little what we did. The report on the proportionality of the face. Un 0,66, 0,64. It took us 3 or 4 tomography scans. Very important. The 3-4 view, the front view. And then the software told us that is a harmonious facial ratio. He also told us close to the classical canons of Greek and Renaissance beauty. Okay, thanks. Who drew like that? Put forward again Leonardo da Vinci, Durer, because they maintain the so-called Greek proportions. Close to 1, 0,5, 0,7. Hence the Sphinx. Its face has a slight predominance in the lower middle third. So this is the proportionality range of the face. The face of the Sphinx is a harmonious face. Slightly elongated at the bottom. This is the software report. Typical of Mediterranean or Renaissance faces. Alright, so... Let's see here. Let's start from this ratio 1, 0,66, 0,64. Classical Renaissance statues, 18-22%. Very common in Greek and Renaissance times. Historical portrait paintings, 12-15%. Frequent in the Italian Renaissance period. Current men on Earth. So the proportionality we found of the Sphinx belongs from 8 to 11%. In terms of 1,066 or 64 of population, adult male living on this Earth, from 8 to 11%, which isn't bad. So there are about 300 to 400 millions of men, with this ratio on 4 billion adult males. Then you see here, why not? Let's make a proportion. Therefore, a correlation with the most important face of Renaissance. The most important face that we have today, which is the face of the Mona Lisa. So the comparison with the so-called Mona Lisa has proportions very close to the Sphinx. The Mona Lisa is 1, 062, 061. The main difference is the face of the Sphinx has the nose-mouth slightly more pronounced. Therefore, an earthly expression, a little more direct. The Mona Lisa is more balanced, more mysterious, has greater harmony. But in the end, it's very similar. Leonardo, who in my opinion was inspired by something, had slightly lengthened the upper third to amplify caricature-like a little. That enigmatic effect. So the face of the Sphinx is very close to the Mona Lisa. Difference less than 5%. Even though the other software told us that before, Sphinx, it's more masculine than feminine. Oh, but that will be seen once we will go digging. Let's change tomography. 0.71, 0.59, we are working in decimal units. Other results. Other results again. High correlation, excellent, perfectly respected. High and medium high. These are other proportionalities of the face of the Sphinx. So in the end, the face of the Sphinx has extraordinary proportions, close to those of the Mona Lisa. It is not identical. The Sphinx is more masculine, more realistic, but it could fall within the same Renaissance aesthetic ideal. So let's start with the tomographies and let's make a general report, a study on the face. 1 066, 0264, and 1 062, 061. Just to make it clear, we are correlating it with one of the most important faces that humanity has today, Mona Lisa. The Sphinx is very similar to the Mona Lisa, so no one can argue. Okay. Let's proceed further. These are the various results we had. We have seen this already. Therefore, the proportionalities. Here. We show you the overlap of this is important. Do you see here? There are structures in here, see? It's empty inside. Seen from the front, look at the hole that was visible before. This one here, which would be the longitudinal part, because we have changed our way of seeing. The projective plane of the tomography is rotated by 90 degrees. Like this. Important. A little dislocated. There is the big snake. A little dislocated. Because I have to find the image of the Sphinx with a certain rotation. But this is the big snake. This one here, nonetheless. These are the two ears. The face. The ears. You can't see the nose here. Here we have put all the tomography cases we have done. Then we made a complete collection of data and reconstructed and reprojected all sound footprints on our model. With all proportions. In the end, putting in all the tomography scans and whatnot, we reached the 96 Aperture. Then I had some fun. I started talking a bit with artificial intelligence. Up to now, we have used all standalone softwares. Let's get into artificial intelligence. So let's say a little what Google Gemini tells us. I don't say it. Google says it. Dear Gemini, what is the probability that there is something interesting here? Google Gemini, blind test, this is important. Blind test is important. We have entrusted AI with the task of interpret the Doppler maps. We said nothing. See it for yourself, we said. 96.1%. The artificial intelligence considered the Sphinx of Giza as absolute benchmark of overlap of graphic landmarks. He confirmed that the underground facility is not just a natural anomaly, but an architectural twin. Probability of 96.1%.
Gemini.
But one might say about Gemini, oh well, Filippo likes Gemini because they subsidize him. Therefore, negative about Gemini, they will withdraw his funds. It can happen that someone says that. Monumental structure, 92%. Underground chambers, 85%. Tunnel network, natural anomaly. This is what interests me. 8%. Random geological anomaly, erosion. This slide is important because I won't recite this to you, but it's better if it gets acquired, because there are all the algorithms that have been used in literature, which are those of the theory of technique of recognition. This is done in engineering, or at least I did it at university. And this is the continuation. Still important to see. Then we moved on to Grok. Grok was a little more severe. Blind test, 88%. Still a good result. Then a blind test of the Doppler tomographic analysis. Grok received the maps without additional information and without any prior assumptions about the Sphinx.
94%. Ok, adesso sì, anche in questo caso questa qui è la pipeline.
This here is the algorithmic pipeline, and therefore it must also be shown, because we need to, the algorithms we have implemented. And then I wanted to spend some time, without to dwell on it, because we surely are all tired by now, to talk about what the project is and how it will go forward. We have created a foundation called Harmonic SAR Foundation, for which Corrado and I are the founder. Corrado is president and founder, and this foundation has as its institutional inspiration goal of promoting scientific research in all fields, but above all, to promote what is human consciousness. We want to go dig there. If we manage to find the funds, if we succeed, maybe funds are not the issue. If we were able to obtain the authorizations, never say digging, we will be going to clean up the Giza Plateau. We'll go clean the shafts.
Dov'è? Sei qui, eh? Dove stai? Eccoli. Okay. Tantissimo.
These shafts, which many are filled with debris while some less. Less, as Corrado showed us, others are completely blocked by debris. And so we think it's an access to the underground part, a convenient access without the need of going through the pyramids. These are the ones in this slide. Our information has been given from Trevor Grassi, who is here with us. Do you see how many shafts there are? It's full. And so we would like to, at least, get access down here, if we can, to access below. Because this room is full of stuff. Do you see it here? And here we show the material that is there. There's practically garbage underneath. And so it's all the debris that is found there, inside these shafts. And then try to restore their original functionality. I'm done here for today by leaving this 3D model, already shown, which represents also the entire endpoint of the project. All this was possible thanks to you and us. All of us, you and we, who are one. You and us don't exist as we all are one. Thanks to everyone, thanks to those who have all worked on this, and we would like in this moment to show you, all of us, these results that we have achieved during this year of quite intense work. Thanks to everyone.